our group really talked about trying to make a difference even if you don't grow up in those types of, neighborhoods. Because the Brian and Luke from Asheville, they passed by those neighborhoods and they called it wrong turn neighborhoods. Because they say the only way to see it is a wrong turn. And that really hit for me because I grew up in one of those wrong turn neighborhoods in Charlotte basically. So that's home for me. So we basically talked about what do we do to change that, and not only that as people, but the legality of it.
This didn't happen over a 1 year span. This didn't happen over a 10-year span, 30-year span. This has been going on for decades now. So it's not going to change in 1 year. It's not going to change in 5 years. But as long as we recognize that it's something that we need to do and efforts we need to put towards that, even if it means going against the grain, that's what we have to do.
So he's talking about how schools are really corrupted and how schools feel prisons and prisons feel cycles for families and how that interconnects with gentrification and food deserts, how people are exiled and forced to eat certain things where and you see it happening in front of your face and you see people becoming content with it because that's how the cycles continue. Because if you have say for instance your parent is content with buying you oodles and noodles to sustain yourself or Vienna sausages or something like that, if some people don't have a mindset to see that something like that is wrong, then they might do that for their kids or it just continues.
We was talking about drugs and how in certain communities and neighborhoods, people with lack of education and lack of opportunities, when they need to survive, that's what they have to resort to, drugs. So we was going into that whole deep conversation on whether is it a good thing or a bad thing, but the whole idea of why is it that people have to resort to those, have to resort to selling drugs? Why can't people resort to other things? And then we got into the whole discussion on how people are just not given that opportunity. People don't know what else out there when all they know is drugs in their neighborhoods and stuff like that. And our whole focus was talking about changing it with education, with love.
Some of the people in our group were saying we grew up in those neighborhoods where you go down the street, there are more precincts on your street than there are grocery stores and CVS's. So, and especially for African Americans, when we're more prone to diabetes and high blood sugar and high blood pressure, we don't have the resources we need to survive. So we're just all about in our society getting those things to the people who need it before people come in and take over and become slummers.
We all have to go through something to get somewhere. You don't necessarily have to go through poverty, but you can go through something mentally or emotionally or physically. So I feel that if you don't go through nothing, how would you know what it feels like to, we have gone from somewhere low to somewhere, great and big. So, I just feel that, in order for change to happen, don't just say it, just, take action and everything. And then I was sharing with them about, what's so stereotypical about what people say about my city. I'm from Memphis. So a lot of people know us for First 48. And it is such a stereotype because all they think is, most people think that Memphis is just, murder city. No, it's not. I promise you it's not. So it's it's a lot of stuff, historic stuff that has happened there and will happen there in the future. So yeah, that's basically.
For me, I come, from a small town. It's full of poverty in the sense of there's a lot of people that are scraping by, just living paycheck to paycheck, getting the bills paid however they can, and but then that's sort of all that I understand of it, because that's where I come from, and my family, I live in a comfortable house, and so it's very, very humbling to come here, and that's sort of why I picked this, because it's a very it's a topic that I think what we talked about isn't talked about enough, because a lot of people are ashamed sort of to talk about their own situations, and so it's always sort of a game of oh no, things are fine, and wanting, because whether it's because people are ashamed to talk about their own situations, or because they want to think like, okay, if I say it's fine, you know.
Like, I'd like to say something from like the South African perspective, because like what I've been listening and just like taking everything in. Like for us, like poverty is a whole different thing. So like poverty is like, it's living in the dirt. It's shacks and you know, kind of corrugated iron and cooking on a paraffin stove and having no electricity and not having a toilet that flushes, having to go fetch water. Like where I was born, it's like a rural area, and like people still have to go fetch water. So like you have to take a wheelbarrow and buckets and have to go fetch water. And like I think we only got electricity when I was like 6 years old. But I was lucky. My mom decided, you know, I want to take you to where the white people are. I want to take you to white schools, and I've been to white schools. So like I know, I can tell the difference between, you know, what is poverty and like, because like I have white friends who like, I look at them like, hey, you're privileged and stuff, and like they don't understand like what they have, like the value of like the education that they're getting. So I'm thinking to my mind, like there are kids like in the townships who are getting a horrible education, and they're just gonna be feeding the cycle of poverty. They'll never get out of it. Like for me to come to America, that's a big thing. They're like, what, you went to America? Because like it's out of their world. They don't think about it. All you just see is on TV. Oh, it's America, whatever. So like for me to be here, like, and to hear your guys' stories and like how poverty affects you, how crime and drugs and all that, because it's exactly the same in South Africa. It's just a different it's a different canvas. It's a different picture. So it's exactly the same thing, just different.
We've basically didn't get really deep into everything, but just trying to figure out who we were. Just actually trying to understand where I come from and where they come from as well. It seemed pretty different, but still the same. Because in my personal sense, where I come from, it's if you see somebody get beat down, you turn the corner. Because that bullet may hit you. And I feel like that all the time. It seems that, it seems that I hate always trying to look in my peephole every 5 seconds to see that I don't have to worry about my little brother getting hurt. It gets really hard sometimes, and I'm just so glad that I'm here today, just to get this experience. Too many people died.
Just we had to get an understanding of each other, and it was hard because, as I was saying, like where I live, like how it is and everything, and it was kind of like some people in my group were like I never knew that happened. Like straight watched the video and was like surprised, like I never knew that happened. But I look at the video and that's like an everyday thing. Like I see that. I walk down the street from that. I look at that every day across my house. Like it's real, and it's not. It didn't get me angry, but it was just like a shock that some people just didn't know that went on at all. And it was like we had to have a understanding of each other, because like it is real. It's not just movies. It's not just TV shows. It's not just reality shows. We're not all just getting drunk, getting high, doing this. It's real. We're getting shot. We're out here killing each other and fighting each other over nothing. We're out here doing bad things to each other over nothing. There's no love anymore. We're all hating each other, and we don't know why. And it's not just a generational thing. It's that everybody hates each other. Just because we're called the lost generation doesn't mean we made ourselves this on our own. Someone raised us to be like this. And so it was like an understanding that we have to have, like, it's not our fault. But we still have to take that blame and take that humbleness and say, we don't want to be the lost generation. We need to find ourselves. And we can only do that if we love each other and come together and stop killing each other, stop hating each other, and be one and love ourselves.